now create reusable Python programs with reusable blocks of code. You can also use variables to store values and use them later. Well, you have everything you need to continue your Python journey, and here is the next step with the level 3 of this course. Note that it's important you feel comfortable with what you've learned in the previous lessons, because that is the starting point for this section. If not, rewatch some of them before you continue. So, in the following lessons, you will discover conditions and loops. Those will allow you to create many different execution paths for different runs of your program. Let's say you want to ask for the user age and then display a different message depending on the age. Or you want to get the list of temperatures you don't know in advance and finally compute the average. For that, you will need conditions and loops. And as you will see, it won't take much time before you can use those new concepts correctly in your code. At the end of the section, you will be able to create more powerful and dynamic Python programs. And let's get started. Let's come back a moment to the Boolean data type. In this lesson, I'm going to show you how you can make some tests and get a Boolean as a result. And this Boolean will be the foundation for using conditions and loops. And for this lesson, I'm going to just use the Python shell here to keep things very simple. So first, we have the Boolean data type with true and false as a value, okay? Only two values. Then what I can do, let's say I want to test the equality between two values. I want to test, so let's make a very simple test. I want to test if 1 is equal to 1, and this is true. And as you can see, to test the equality, I use two equal signs, okay? Just one equal sign is to assign a value on the right to a variable on the left. With two equal signs, this is important to make the difference. This is going to compare the value on the left and the value on the right and return a Boolean. Is this true or is this false? Now, if I want to test, let's say 1 is equal to 2, well, this is false. Okay, so that kind of conditional statements, we are going to use that in the conditions and in the loops. Now, let's see what we can do here. So we can use integers, okay? We can compare two integers. We can also compare, let's see, 2 is equal to 2, so 2.0 is equal to 2.0. We can also compare float number. We can compare strings. Okay, hello is equal to hello. Now, if I do the same, but let's say I put an uppercase here, this is false. And then, well, we have just seen the equal operator, okay? This is just one comparison operator, and you have different operators for different stuff you want to test. Now, let's say I want to test not the equality, but the inequality. I want to test if 1 is different than 2. In this case, I'm going to use exclamation mark equal. And this is true because 1 is different than 2. If I test if 1 is different than 1, this is false. Okay, so that's it for the equality. And now what you can test is you can test if a value is, for example, lower than another value. Let's test if 1 is lower than 2 with this angle bracket here. And this is true. Now let's test if 1 is lower than 1. This is false because just one angle bracket means that it is strictly lower than this, okay? So 1 is not strictly lower than 1. So this is false. Now I can also test with the angle bracket and equal, and this means lower or equal than 1. So if I press enter, we have true because 1 is lower or equal than 1. And I can make the opposite also. I can test if it is greater. So if 1 is greater than 2, this is false. 1 is greater or equal than 2, so this is still false. Let's put 1, and this is true because 1 is greater or equal than 1. Okay, now 2 is greater than 1. In this case, that works. Okay, so basically you have 6 comparison operators: the equal, the different than, and then the strictly lower or equal, strictly greater, and greater or equal, okay? And just one last thing I'm going to show you, which is very specific to Python, is, let's say you have a list, number list. I'm going to create a list with just some numbers, okay, 1, 2, and 4. What I can do is I can check if a value is inside that list very simply. I can do, for example, 2 in number list, and this is true. So you put first the value, and then the keyword in, and then the name of the list. So here we test if 2 is inside that list. Yes, because it's here. If I try with 3 in number list, this is false because there is no element that corresponds to 3 in the list. So that is very specific to Python. And that's something that you are going to use also a lot in the future. Okay, you can write your own conditional statements and get a Boolean value as a result. Now, what you can also do is to test a combination of multiple conditional statements. And let's see that with an example. Okay, so everything we've done here is just test one conditional statement every time. Okay, now what I'm going to do here, I'm going to put some parentheses to make it clearer. 1 is equal to 1, so I'm going to test if 1 is equal to 1, or let's say 3 is equal to 4. And what is the result of that? The result of that is true. Okay, now let's do the same thing, and I'm going to put AND, and the result of that is false. Okay, so now let me explain that. So you can combine different conditional statements with the keywords OR and the keywords AND. What does it do? So for the keyword OR, so you have two, here you have two statements. What it's going to do, it's going to evaluate each statement. Okay, so this one will be true, and this one will be false, because 3 is different than 4. And then with the OR keyword, it's going to check if at least one of the two values, one of the two results is true. If one of the two results is true, then the final result is true. So here, because that condition is true, this can be false, it doesn't really matter. The result of the whole statement will be true. And now with the AND is different. With the AND, both conditional statements must be true so that the result is true. Okay? If this is true and this is false, then this is going to be false, like here. Okay? Now I'm going to just show you the different combination you can do. Let's say I do true or true. This is going to give true. Now true or false. This is also going to give true, and this is the exact case we have here. Okay, you can also put false or true, it doesn't matter the order here. And if I do false or false, so if both conditions are false, the result is false. And now for the AND, if I do true and true, this is true, okay? But now if I do, for example, true and false, the result will be false, okay? Because both conditions need to be true. And of course, false and false is false. So here you have all the possibilities, all the combinations you can have. And of course, here you combine two statements, but you can combine many more. Okay, you can add or, and then another or, and then maybe and, etc., etc. So now let's just see with another example. Let's say you have a temperature variable, and the temperature is 23.0 Celsius degrees. I'm going to test temperature greater than 20 and temperature lower than 30. And this is true. Okay, let's say, so you have a temperature, you want to test if the temperature is between 20 and 30, so you can use this statement. You first check that the temperature is greater than 20, you check that the temperature is lower than 30, and you use the AND keyword so that both conditions must be true, so that the result is true. Alright, and that's pretty much it for the conditional statements. And back to the text editor with PyCharm. In a Python program, what you have seen for now is that all the instructions are executed one by one following the order of the lines here. With the IfS structure, you will be able to execute some instructions only if a condition is true. And to build those conditions, we are going to use the conditional statements that we have just seen before. So I have created a new file here named level3.py, okay, just to have a clear start for this section. I'm going to declare a variable user age, and let's say 23, okay? And now I'm going to create an if structure. So this is very simple. You put if first, and then you're going to put a conditional statement. So that is the thing we have just seen before. So let's say we want to test if user age is greater or equal than 18. So you just write the conditional statement like this, and then you add a colon, and then you press enter, and as you can see, this is not going to go back to the first indentation here. This is going to add a new indentation here with 4 spaces, okay? Just like we had for functions. So for conditions also, whenever you enter a condition, you have a new indentation. Now I'm going to, let's say, print you're officially an adult. Okay, just one U. And then I'm just going to come back to the first indentation and print, let's say, end of program. So what is going to happen here? First, the variable is declared here, and then with the if, what's going to happen is that this is going to be evaluated. And if this is going to be true, okay, the result is either true or false. If this is true, we are going to enter the if, and we are going to execute all the instructions that are indented just after the if, okay? So whatever instruction I add here, okay, is going to be executed. If this is false, this is not going to be executed, okay? And then this line, I've just added this so we can see that this is going to be executed every time, okay? First, we're going to go to the if and then print end of program. So let me just run that. Okay, so make sure you have selected level 3 here. If not, go to run and run ... here. I'm going to run that. And you can see you are officially an adult. Why is that? Because this is evaluated to true because user age is 23. Now let's say I put 12 and I run again. You can see we don't have you're officially an adult, okay? But we have the end of program, okay? End of program is printed every time. So this line, or just this block with everything indented after the if, is going to be executed only if that condition is true. And now, well, I'm going to, let's say we want to test if the user is an adult, but if the user age is lower than 30, strictly lower than 30. So what I can do is I can do end user age is strictly lower than 30. And well, you don't really need parentheses here, but you can add them if you want more clarity, okay? I'm going to add them here. And then we are going to change that, and let's say you're an adult below 30. Okay, so if I run this, of course, we don't have anything. Now, if I put 25, I run this, you're an adult below 30. And if I put 30 or more, it is not going to work. Okay, we don't have the you're an adult below 30. And now, well, let's just write another if here. So you can just write another if, and what's going to happen is that this first if will be checked and then executed if needed, and then this one is going to be checked and executed also. So you can add as many if structure as you want in your program. Okay, let's say I'm going to create a month variable, and the month is July. And I'm going to test if month is equal to July. Let's say we want to print summertime. Okay, let's run this. And you can see we have, so now we don't have, so this is false, so this is not going to be executed, but then we come back here to the first indentation, we continue, we check if month is equal to July, yes, so summertime. Okay, and as you can see, the indentation is very important. So if I can print another, say print A, you can see summertime A. So whatever is indented will be executed if the condition is true in the if. Okay, to recap, if structures will allow you to decide to execute or not a set of instructions. and the decision will happen directly during the program execution. To make decisions, you can use any combination of conditional statement with any data type. Let's now improve that if structure. So with what we've seen, we can execute this block of code if that condition is true. But what if you want to execute a different set of instructions if the condition is false? So you want to test if it's true, execute something, and if it's false, you execute something else. Well, let's see that. So first I'm going to come back to the first statement here to make it very simple. Okay. User age greater or equal than 18, you are an adult. And then I'm going to come back, so I press enter, and I go back to the first indentation and I write else with a colon. I press enter, I have a new indentation, print, you're not an adult yet. So in this case, so first is going to check if that is true. If that is true, it's going to execute the next indented block of code. And if that is not true, so if this is false, we go to the else, and then we can execute that block of code. So now let's run this. Okay, so we still have the summertime and end of program, but you have you're an adult because user age is 30. Now I'm going to put 17, and you can see you are not an adult yet. So you can use if and else, and you can also add intermediate conditions with else if, or in Python it's named elif. And let's see that with this structure here. So I'm first going to modify this, okay, because summertime is actually, so from the north hemisphere, it's June, July, and August, okay? So let's say if month in June, July, August. So we use the test here to check if one value is in one list, okay? So if the value is June or July or August, it's going to work and print summertime. Let's just test that. Okay, summertime. Now, what if I want to test if the month is actually in the winter time or the springtime or the autumn time? What I can do, I can use elif, okay, not else if, okay, else if can be in other languages, but for Python, this is going to be elif. Month in, let's say we want to test September, and then October, and then November. We can print autumn time. So what's going to happen is first is going to check if that condition is true. If yes, it's going to execute that block of code and then exit. Okay, once a condition is true, a block of code is executed and then the if will exit. If this is not true, it's going to go to the next elif, if there is one, and check if that is true. If that is true, it's going to execute that. And if it's false, it's not going to execute anything, and then any of the block here will not be executed, and we continue the execution here. Okay? Now I'm going to add another elif, month in, so let's do all the year. So November, we have December, and then January, and then February. Okay. If the month is in that range, we are going to print winter time. And then, so here we still have 3 months in the year, okay? We have March, April, and May. I could do elif month in March, April, and May, but I can just do else, because, well, that's the only possibility that's left. So else print springtime. We first check if that is true, we print summertime, we exit. If that is false, we check this. If this is true, we print autumn time and exit. If this is still false, we continue with this. And if this is true, we print winter time. If this is still false, we go to the else and then we print springtime. Okay, so we have July, which is summertime. Let's test with September. You can see autumn time, okay, because this is false, this is true, so we execute that, and then we skip all the rest. Now let's say May, you can see springtime, okay? We are in the else. So you can test here with different values, okay, to see where you end up in the if structure. All right, now you are able to use if structure to choose what to execute depending on different conditions. This will allow you to make your programs much more dynamic. Let's now discover what are loops and how to use them with Python. So let's first understand why you need loops. I have created a very simple program here that prints hello 10 times, okay? Let's run that program, and actually, yes, it prints hello 10 times, but that's quite not convenient. And now, what if I ask you to print hello 100 times or 1000 times? Well, you're not going to write 1000 lines of print hello, no? So whenever you need to repeat some instructions, let's say more than 2 or 3 times, this is where you are going to use loops. And we are going to start with the for loops. So I'm going to remove all that, and instead I'm going to do for I in range 10. So let's just follow along, and then I'm going to explain to you. Print hello. If I execute this, I still have hello printed 10 times, okay? So what happened here? You can use the for loop, so you start with for, and then you are going to use an index, okay? So the index, which is going to go through a range or through a list, and the convention for that index is to name it I, okay? So for I, and then in, what you can do is use range. So basically, if you use range, a range is a list which goes from 0 to this value minus 1. So basically, this is going to go between 0 and 9. Okay, so you have 10 elements between 0 and 9. And then you have a colon here. So what is going to happen is that this is going to execute the next block of code, which is indented here, as you can see. It's going to execute for each index, okay, that you have for the range, okay? So it's going to execute it for I is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So basically with that, you just execute that block of code 10 times. And the indentation here is super, super important. I'm going to print test here, okay? So hello and then test 10 times. I click play to run, and you can see hello test 10 times. Now I'm going to remove the indentation here and see what happens. We have hello 10 times and then test just 1 time, okay? Because with for loop, you are going to execute this, so 10 times, only the instructions that are indented in that block of code. And then you continue the execution back to the normal indentation, and you continue the execution of your program. Okay, so the indentation is super important. And one thing I'm going to show you is we can actually print that I. So the I will be here an integer. So I can do hello and then plus, let's say str I. Okay, I cast the number to a string. And let's run that. And you can see now I have hello 0, hello 1, etc. until hello 9. So you can actually see what's happening here. So the I is going to take all the values between 0 and 10 minus 1. And then we can use that I inside the loop. Now if I want to print 100 times, I just put 100 here, and I run, and you can see we print hello 100 times with a different number every time. Okay, so that's very powerful. Here, with just 2 lines of code, we can print this 100 times. So there are 2 kinds of loops